An actual smash and grab is a bit more criminal in nature, but Barcelona 1-0 against Leganés on the road, that was the football equivalent. The Blaugrana went into Madrid, got the 3 points, and got out largely with everybody intact. We'll get to the injuries, unfortunately, here in a second. But first, welcome to episode 679 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and I firstly want to thank everybody that joined me on bigup.com for the second half of the Leganes watch-along. Don't worry for Tuesday's match against Borussia Dortmund in the second leg of the Champions League. I will have that entire match on the watch-along, as well as a hate watch-along, if you want to call it that, for Real Madrid and Arsenal, as well as Bayern and Inter Milan. That's going to be taking place on Wednesday. So you will be seeing and hearing a lot of me, especially if you join me on the watch-alongs on Big Up, but I will have 5 headlines coming after that matchup on Tuesday as well. So plenty to look forward to on the YouTube channel, on the podcast app. Subscribe wherever you can. That's always the easiest and the biggest way you can help me out, as well as giving as low as $3 to Patreon. That continues to help me make these shows. Without further ado, let's dive in. The 5 headlines from Barcelona's 1-0 win over Leganés. Headline 1 is Leganés. Giant Killers. I asked this as a question because did take something off Barcelona the first time they met. They also took something off Real Madrid, and yet they still might be going down in the relegation fight. So Leganés, it is an interesting season from them. Usually, if you're a team that can take something off the big 2 giants, at the very least, you can do enough to wind up staying up. I don't know if Leganés is going to do that, but they didn't look like a relegation side, at least in the first half. If anything, Barcelona also, if you're going to say they both look like relegation sides, it's hard to argue with that. The 7th minute, it was already a yellow card for Leganés. They had no answer for Lamine Yamal early, and I'll give my Lamine Yamal stuff here at this point because there isn't much more in this match to talk about with Lamine Yamal. I thought he was bright in about the first 15 minutes, and then he kind of went into second gear, which I've said it before. If he's going to keep playing 90 minutes at his age and with the way that he's used in, we'll say, big matches, important matches, these games are also significant. They're also important, but Barcelona can get 3 points. They can get a result with him kind of in second and third gear. And I, as I told you many times before, am totally fine with that. Would it be better if you could throw another player in his stead? Sure. But if this match had gone sideways, I would have expected to see a bit more Lamine Yamal there in the second half than was actually what was needed. The first half is really more about Leganés. In the 13th minute, they had a really great chance. Former academy player for Barcelona in Raba, he takes Iñigo Martinez out wide with Koundé upfield. Then he squares it to Alti, but this is where Chesney had to come up big. La Liga called him the man of the match. I didn't necessarily go that direction. You're going to hear in my 4th headline who I actually went with. I think you can have an idea. But Chesney, he was a man of the match for La Liga, probably just because of this save. This is what kept Barcelona, we'll say, in this match. Because if you thought Leganés were defending before, they had 27% possession in the first half. They would have been willing to have 8% of possession in the second half if they wound up getting a goal here. And as the first half went along, you did kind of see what the game plan was from Barcelona from the beginning. It was to rely, yes, a little bit on individual skill, but mainly because Barcelona had possession, and that skill they wanted to come because they were driving at Leganés. They wanted their runners to go at them, not even with their legs, but mostly with the ball, and force those second help and defenders trying to find a third man run somewhere. They were also trying to force Leganés to communicate on switches, and it led to some half-decent chances, but not only was it nothing concrete, but I didn't think Barcelona were, A, moving the ball quick enough to get those kind of results, and B, they weren't really moving around as much as they need to and switching places, especially that front 3. They were a bit stagnant. We saw it better in the second half, which we'll get to in a second, but yeah, I think Flick had something to think about from this first half. 35th minute, Rafinha has a huge tackle on Raba, who at that point was a man of the match, and if Leganés had gotten all 3 points, yeah, he probably would have had to have a goal if they were going to do that, but he had an argument as well. Raba did, and I would hope that even if Leganés go down, he has a spot in the first division next season. Now, a player that is obviously going to have a spot in the first division, but maybe not for the next few weeks, in Balde, he goes down to an injury in the 40th minute, replaced by Gerard Martin. And right after that, there's a penalty appeal for Leganés before the first half ended. Araujo didn't foul Diomande, and it was a bit of a flop from the player as well. But we go into our second headline with nothing but concern for Alejandro Balde. Headline 2 is put them under pressure. Good news, bad news with this second headline, because at halftime, the change that didn't necessarily need to be made, but was made for both tactical reasons, and apparently Araujo was dealing with some discomfort. So De Jong coming on for Araujo, sure, it was partially precautionary, but I think it also did something stylistically and tactically. It did change everything for Barcelona in their build-up. Because De Jong comes on, it pushes Eric Garcia back to center back. It's a good idea to keep that ball playing center back in Eric on the field. That's why Araujo was the man to jump off. If you're going to have 75%, 80% possession in the second half, you don't really need Araujo there. I mean, yes, you need him on the counterattack against those fast breaks for Leganés. But in terms of buildup, if you're going to get a goal, you want to try to outscore Leganés, not necessarily hold on and hope that they don't get a counterattack. So I understand Eric Garcia staying on. Then Frenkie de Jong also changed the entire makeup of how Barcelona were building. Him coming on helped push the fullbacks even higher, which does change the line of confrontation where Barcelona has possession. And he'll also set up between the center backs. And unlike Eric Garcia, has the ability to both play a long pass, but also drive the ball forward. And as I mentioned, the strategy against Leganés, especially with them playing at low block, is to take runners with the ball and drive at them. Just don't lose it. And De Jong didn't do that. And he was the difference maker, I think, tactically in this game for Barcelona. The bad news, meanwhile, is that Balde's injury does seem to be a bit serious. The most recent reports is that even with tests coming tomorrow, because it is a hamstring injury, he will likely miss at least 3 weeks, meaning he is out for the Copa del Rey final against Real Madrid. So that's some bad news for Barcelona. He would also very likely miss the first leg of any potential semifinal of the Champions League that Barcelona is in. That is a big, big deal because yes, Gerard Martin, I'm going to say some good things about him in just a second, but having Gerard Martin without Alejandro Balde, that is definitely a worry for me. He, that being Balde, was certainly one of the untouchables in the squad, and it's a big drop off from Gerard Martin, regardless of how good Martin can be. Because in the 48th minute, Gerard Martin did show you the good and the bad. He loses the ball, but then he puts the effort in, immediately wins it back against two Leganés players, which gives Barcelona a numerical advantage going the other way. Rafinha with acres of space after the turnover. He plays the ball in for Lewandowski on the cross, and at full stretch, it's an own goal. Jorge Sanz, he's credited with the goal. And I know Barcelona wound up getting 3 points against Leganés, and it's an own goal, not much to celebrate. I don't care. Gerard Martin winds up helping Barcelona get the 3 points. It's an own goal. That kind of sums up this match, if I'm being honest. Headline 3 then, suffering on both sides. All right, this actually kind of sums up the rest of that match. 58th minute, Fermin Lopez, who started this game, and I thought he was one of the better players for Barca in the first half, and didn't really necessarily in the second half have the best of moments, especially a huge, huge miss for him in the 58th. He's in the box. He danced through 3. That's a highlight. Put it in the highlight pack. It's a skill move that definitely should be remembered. But unfortunately, it's not an all-time memory for him because while he got around Sergio, he put the ball just wide, and this is an all-time howler of a miss from Fermin Lopez. 61st minute, it's a shout for a Leganés handball against Iñigo Martinez, but no, he had his arm tucked in. Then another one on Gerard Martin, but that one also bounced up on him from the ground, and it was in a natural position, was his arm. So nothing there for Leganés. Then the 63rd minute, Lewandowski is not off by much with this header, the cross from Rafinha. Leganés were giving Rafinha way too much time to consider his crosses there in the second half. And that was the last action from Lewandowski because he is substituted out then in the 67th minute, along with Fermin Lopez. On comes Ferran Torres and Gavi, who didn't really change the game too much. This was a war of attrition. That's why I'm saying suffering on both sides for Barcelona. It was also really interesting right after that substitute pattern, though, to see Rafinha on the right in build-up just for a moment there. Barcelona were overloading the right side, and once they got that switch off, it was Gerard Martin in way, way, way too much space that Leganés should be comfortable with. He couldn't deliver the final ball, but I did like the fact that, as I mentioned in the first half, Barcelona were not doing a very good job of switching up their positioning, especially with that front three. But then Ferran Torres coming on for Lewandowski, things got even more mobile for that front three. So Rafinha was kind of the guy to be the joker to pop up where he needed to be. And I thought that helped Barcelona, along with De Jong, get some semblance of control there in the second half. The big scare came in the 76th minute, though, for Leganés. It's a cross from out wide, sliding in with Gerard Garcia, and it goes just wide of Szczesny's goal. The keeper was beat. Szczesny was beat there, so Barcelona does dodge a bullet here. Headline 4 is You Beautiful Basque Man. Now, these are two Catalans, and Eric Garcia and Cubarsí. Eric Garcia coming off for Cubarsí in the 80th minute. So that's not who I'm talking about. 81st minute, it's another miss on the doorstep from Barcelona. The 88th minute, De Jong with a yellow to save a counter. People were saying this is typical De Jong. No, that's a tactical foul that Costa would make, Pedri would make, Gabi would make. I thought De Jong was excellent in this game, and there's no shade for the Dutch player here in my match review today. 92nd minute, here's what I'm talking about, the beautiful Basque man in Iñigo Martinez, a 10 of 10 tackle. You will not see a better tackle, maybe this entire season, from anybody. He comes from behind on Munir. He goes with his leading leg, so a bit unnatural to go down in that fashion. Goes with his leading leg on the right side to make contact, which also is not his natural leg. And by going down with his right leg, he doesn't have to come across his body for the tackle. This is a match-winning tackle. And Iñigo Martinez, I said it in the last watch along, I could have never imagined just how good of a season he would be having. I know he was a good vet, and he had some pretty gosh darn good seasons that people didn't pay attention to, both at Athletic Club and at Real Sociedad. But now he's put himself in that pantheon of not just good player in Spain, but he is an all-around one of the best center backs in world football this year. He has earned his spot. There's a reason why Araujo is on the bench, and it has less to do with Araujo, his contract, and his quality than it does the fact that Iñigo Martinez is a must-start player for FC Barcelona and all the trophies that they're trying to get. Closing out proceedings here, it's a last-ditch effort from Pedri. He was offside anyway, but it gave Barcelona enough possession in that Leganés third to wind out the clock, meaning Barcelona, at time of recording, are 7 points ahead of Real Madrid. They still have to play Alaves, who are in a relegation fight themselves, tomorrow morning. So Real Madrid could easily take it back to 4 again. But to go up 7 points, that puts a lot of pressure on an opponent that also has to worry about a 3-0 deficit in the Champions League against Arsenal, in a way that Barcelona don't have that same pressure of 4-0 against Borussia Dortmund. Barcelona are doing a good job taking care of business in their games to put pressure on the opposition in Real Madrid. And that's the team that they're going to face in the Copa del Rey final in a few weeks too. Headline 5 is Guille Fernandez eyes the exit. It is a question, but the other question would be, is Dan, why did you only have 4 headlines for a 1-0 game in an own goal with Leganés? Well, I think you know the answer to that. So no, my 5th headline is about Guille Fernandez because I did the top 5 news of the week yesterday. And of course, the news dump comes from friend of the show, Arsene, today. He did kind of speculate yesterday about it, but then it was confirmed by Catalan journalists around the club that Guille Fernandez, and where there is smoke, there is fire here. The important people have mentioned that this is probably very real. It's either a loan or a transfer, potentially for the summer. Guille Fernandez, he is a starter for Barca Athletic, but I think with that contract renewal he had last year when he turned 16, I think he was expecting a few more first-team chances. And the player that he is, that I see as Barca Athletic, there's a lot of teams. Now, I don't know about Man City and Bayern Munich, but definitely Borussia Dortmund and Porto, the other clubs that seem to be rumored around him, he could get chances with them. So I totally understand why the player has one eye out, but this is the kind of talent that if you're Barcelona, you got to find somebody to talk to him, not necessarily to promise him something for the first team, because it's really hard. He's a 10 for Barcelona. Maybe you can ask Pablo Torre about his minutes. And because if that's what Guille Fernandez wants to do next year, then you got to sell Pablo Torre. But that's a really hard question for culés to ask themselves. I really like the promise, and I think the potential of Guille Fernandez is at least or greater than Fermin Lopez and Pablo Torre, and maybe even Dani Olmo. That might be the level. But between Dani Olmo and Fermin Lopez and Pablo Torre, Gabi can play there as well. We saw Frenkie de Jong get some minutes there early in the season, but he is firmly now back as a double pivot. Either way, Rafinha has also been there as well. The 10 spot at Barcelona, there are not enough minutes to go around, and Guille Fernandez might be looking at the next season or two and saying, hey, Fermin Lopez is a good player. I don't know when I'm getting time. Maybe it's time for me to do what's best for me. It's tough, though, because with his cousin, Tony Fernandez, I said he's likely to go to preseason with the first team, and I expect Tony to get some opportunities with the first team next season, especially as a backup for Lamine Yamal. I think Tony Fernandez is ready. I would love to see the cousins together, but hey, individually, you've got to get your minutes wherever you can get them. So Guille Fernandez, even if he leaves, I would love if the club could make sure that they don't lose out in the future on a talent like that. There is good news, though, coming from the academy as of today. Juvenil A, Juvenil B, and Cadet A, which is the U19s, 18s, and 16s, respectively. They have all been crowned champions of the respective leagues, and that is still with having a few match days to play. So now it's time, honestly, for the Femini and the men's first team, time for them to join the party. In the meantime, the first team and the Femini are also going to be fighting for other trophies as well as the Champions League. So I remind you, on Tuesday, I will have the watch-along for Borussia Dortmund. Then Wednesday, it's a hate watch-along for the other 2 Champions League games to see who Barcelona will actually play if they beat Borussia Dortmund and survive in Bayern Munich against Inter Milan. And of course, we're also going to have a little bit of fun with Real Madrid and Arsenal, hopefully at Real Madrid's expense. Either way, you know it's always comes down to Barcelona. Who cares about those guys in whites? As always, we're Sabari.